Hello and welcome back to another episode of Gut Reaction. We are here with several guests today. You've got myself, Overt. We've got PG, who will be our host today. We've got Question, and we've got Touch Grass. The reason for the pseudonyms is because of the nature of this podcast. The podcast, in of itself, is all about your initial reaction to things. The topic has been searched up by a PG for at least an hour, and everyone else hasn't known about what the topic is going to be up until right as we're hearing it right now. So I'm going to pass this over to my illustrious colleague, PG, to begin us on this amazing conversation.
Okay, thank you very much, Overt. And yeah, okay, my name's PG, and as people who are reading the title today, our topic is what is wisdom? And better yet, is it different? And if so, how is it different to intelligence? And to get, I guess, to get started, I'll just read by the dictionary definition. Oxford Language defines wisdom as the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment of being wise. But I think maybe we can start kicking off by everyone else giving what do they think? What is their definition of wisdom? How would they define it? I'll pass it over to you guys to start with that.
It's an interesting definition, not gonna lie. I think the issue with it is it's kind of circular in its definition. If it's because the definition it says it's about being wise, so it's not necessarily explaining exactly what it is, which is quite interesting. So you have to be wise to understand what wisdom is. Sorry.
Well, I guess yeah. If we look at it, we have because I think it was when you read Oxford definition, it adds that little last bit as a kind of using it in a sentence. But if we can to extract what it's really saying is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. That is its definition.
Okay.
But obviously, I think we all have our own variations of it. So I'm just curious as to what you guys think at first. I have some questions to lead on later, but I think to get a foundation.
I think.
guess the thing would be as well that people might, rightly or wrongly, probably oftenly wrongly assume that people get more wise over time with age, whereas intelligence, people tend to think of it as being somewhat innate. Wisdom may also be, but they're often divided. I guess the sort of quality of judgment, whether you could trust someone's judgment, would determine whether they're considered wise. Whereas intelligence is more a capacity for learning. Measuring either of these things, I'm sure, would bring us into a whole load of sort of problems, but I'm sure it's possible to do it in some way, imperfectly. But I guess in Dungeons and Dragons, of course, they divide the two as different stats that are used for different tasks.
Do you know what? That's actually funny. I really actually like that. Dungeons and Dragons happens in two different stats. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week.
Each individual stats, there you go. Described.
I like that though. No, I like that. What do you say? What do you say, Touch Grass? What do you say?
Well, firstly, I'll just say that whole dungeons thing about Dungeons and Dragons about how it makes them separate stats. That is a very nice and mature way going about.
You can say it's very wise.
Yes, indeed, very wise. So, okay, remind me what the main question is again.
Well, the main question is, what is wisdom? That is how, and as an extra on top of that, I would ask us to try and figure out, is it different to intelligence? And if so, how?
Well, quite frankly, I'm not even sure if I can add that much to this part of the conversation. Honestly, I think Mark, Harry Scary said it best.
Okay, fair. All right, Overt, do you have anything? Because I have some extra things to add on, but
Yeah.
if you want to get yours up first.
I mean, I'm interested to know what the add-ons were. But yeah, I'm still enjoying.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, we're just building it up. Oh,
Yeah.
because funnily enough, Scary actually covered one of my questions, which is does wisdom always come with age, or can young people be wise? And I think that's I would personally say I agree, because when you look at go on. Okay, go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So I was going to relate it to what we configure as humanity's special power, and that's our ability to transfer knowledge onwards, which I believe is quite a wise trait as a species. Like, that's kind of, if we notice how humanity goes, we grow exponentially just the more knowledge is behind us. So, just in the nature of how we as a society and as a race has developed, we develop over being wise, and that wisdom is learning what people older than us have failed at and not doing that same issue. So, for example, we know what's poisonous and what's not nowadays. We know why things are poisonous. We know this plant can be really beneficial, but it has these issues because people have lived and died, and those consequences are passed on as a form of wisdom. We know kind of roughly some ways to define what a plague is based on nursery rhymes, which is a wise way to tell children what to look out for. So it's quite interesting how, at least for me, wisdom is understanding the lessons that the previous generations are imparting on you, and that's not to do with age, but I think that to an extent, if you're younger, you're more malleable to take on all these lessons from older people. Like, you're in your learning phase, if that makes sense.
No, that's okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, because
I mean,
I
would link it more to how I link wisdom more to how you make a decision rather than knowledge. I mean, it might be wise to pass on knowledge, or to acquire knowledge, but I mean, I would personally kind of associate wisdom with but like decision making and how you make a decision, and that can be based on knowledge you've acquired over time, and you might know based on a previous experience or knowledge you've acquired to make a particular decision based on something that happens. Like, you might be in interpersonal situation and you think, well, this actually seems eerily like something I've experienced prior to this. This person's behaving in a way that kind of I feel that I've encountered before, so therefore I'm going to kind of expect this particular outcome to happen, and respond to it with something that you think might be effective based on previous experience and knowledge. But yeah, I guess also it's the thing is, of course, is people don't always like associating it with knowledge. Is people don't always knowledge isn't correct. That's one thing, and then people will actually often be counterfactual in certain ways, and they don't necessarily have the facility to find out precisely what is and isn't true. Like, for example, the like mentioning what's poisonous and isn't poisonous. Yeah, you can probably get a fairly comprehensive kind of list of things, but if you wanted to look at the latest research on something, like only a handful of people are especially equipped to really to read all the research, and wouldn't even have access to it anyway as a sort of civilian as it is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that was pretty decent, to be fair. I do think I wanted to push back on something you said, though, about you said, what was it? You said knowledge isn't always. You say knowledge isn't always true. Is that what you said?
Yeah, people
Yeah.
believe things that aren't true. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't know they're not
Yeah, yeah.
true, but sometimes you can tell someone and show them and demonstrate something isn't true, and they'll still believe it. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay, no, yeah. Well, I didn't mean push back. I meant like just circle back because I think that's a funny point. That's a good point. Is because when you look at, because my personal kind of definition is with judgment, but it relies on what knowledge is. Because to me, wisdom is the ability to correctly use knowledge, to be able to navigate obstacles in life or life with the knowledge at hand in the right way. And there's a few definitions of where I have and where it comes from, but there's one that I wanted to throw in is a question is, do we think, or is there only one kind of wisdom? Or is there different kinds of wisdom?
That's actually quite an interesting format of asking it. I think the overarching way that we describe wisdom can be seen in one light, so application of knowledge. But at the same time, I think the way you apply knowledge changes. So, an example is if I'm doing a maths problem and I know one method on how to do division, that will be the only method that I use to do that division. But if I know several different ways to do that same division code, I might choose a specific way because of some outside factor. So it's like the wisdom is the application of the specific way that I'm doing it based on what actually works best for the problem. But at the same time, kind of the types of things you're looking at will change based on everything that you're experiencing. So, like, if you're a bricklayer, your experience is about whether or not you've got the right mix. You're trying to make sure you've got the right materials. You're trying to make sure you've got the right spirit level linings and plumb lines and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with more intellectual stuff, you're looking at how you're applying your mind. You're not looking how things are necessarily applying within physicality, which I think is different aspects on how wisdom is applied, which is the applied use of your knowledge or knowledge of lack of knowledge as well.
You know what? I'm actually very impressed because you've not summarized, but you've gone over a big point I was going to talk about. Is that the Greeks? The reason why I asked that is because the Greeks believed that there are three different kinds of wisdom. One of them being Sophia, theoretical wisdom, phronesis, practical wisdom, and episteme, technical knowledge. Right, and as you kind of described it, is that I'm quoting I was saying when I says that Sophia represents theoretical wisdom, the knowledge of underlying principles and concepts. Right, it says this types of wisdom seeks to answer the big questions of life, such as the meaning of existence, the nature of reality, and the purpose of existence. And then you also have phronesis, which is practical wisdom, and it's concerned with how to act and make ethical decisions, like with what doctors do and lawyers and chefs. And then you've got technical knowledge, which is, you could, as they call it, the wisdom of engineers, scientists, and mathematicians. It's the precise kind of wisdom. It's what you talked about with the bricklayer. Is that there is a bricklayer knowing how to lay down the cement and properly use a trowel is a different wisdom to trying to help a friend in a tense situation. I just thought that was I just thought it was mad, and I guess in a way I was going to ask, do you guys agree with that? Do you guys agree with that? There's different kinds of wisdom, but I think it seems like from the
Absolutely.
reactions, yeah. I mean, I would too. I personally would too, but I thought it was just nuts how you,
this is always
you went
the
for it.
thing with putting stuff in categories. On the one hand, being able to describe something is kind of gains the ability to sort of identify trends and categories and things, like sort of label things in the world as they exist, but at the same time, whether this is definitely the best way to categorize wisdom, and whether wisdom is even the best way to categorize whatever it is we're describing here is, I mean, it's hard. It's like, do we, in other cultures and other languages, is there maybe words that are sort of roughly equivalent but a bit different in their meanings, and maybe describe something different to what we would call wisdom? And does it entirely overlap? But yeah, I think the categories, and identifying the three different types of wisdom. You said, is it technical, epistemological, so sort of knowledge, or the theory of knowledge, and then what's the other one? Is it theoretical or something? Or
So if you were to no, that's no story. So there's theoretical, practical, and technical.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Practical,
so
technical,
Sophia, phronesis, and episteme. Sophia is the theoretical, the big questions. You know, like you have all those Greek philosophers just sitting there pondering the universe. That's that kind of that kind of wisdom. And then you've got phronesis, which is kind of the doing. It's the doing of the wisdom.
Is that
And then
wisdom?
you've got episteme.
I mean, it might just be an accurate belief.
Okay, that's a good question. No, that's a good question. I personally would say yes, because if you don't act, there's a very good quote I need to pull up actually. Hang on, which is I'll pull up one sec. Say sorry for the silence.
That's okay.
I'm just going to use the silence to talk about how interesting it is that the three Greek words are once again the stems of multiple disciplines of thought. Because you've got thea, which is theology, theologians, the idea of religion. Then you've got I can't remember what the PH one was, but there was one that sounded like
Phronesis.
Phronesis. That's obviously to philosophy. And then you've got the practical stuff, which is obviously linked to modern day stuff as well. So that just seems like we kind of adapt what one group says is one thing and kind of build on that over time, which is quite interesting. Sorry, I just thought it was interesting.
Okay, I can't find the
word
the original
Sophia.
quote.
Is that related to the word sophistry?
I mean, I haven't seen that, but Sophia is actually the Greek word for wisdom, and this is a funny point. A fact I found out is philosophy. The word literally means the love of wisdom. Because
sophistry is apparently the use of clever but false arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving. I wonder if the words are actually related. I think they may not be.
They possibly could be. I mean, you'd be surprised. But what I found out is that because philo means love, right? You got phile.
Yes,
you know,
it's
got
related.
And phile, and then Sophia means wisdom. So the phile Sophia, philosophy means the love of wisdom, which is just a fun fact I found.
It's also very interesting how every single one of those are very feminine names too.
Yeah, well, it's based on like the Wikipedia article. I'm probably not supposed to have this open up.
Question
not
mark.
Naughty.
Question to the mark. Look at you trying to answer the question.
Naughty.
Okay, so I'll put that away.
Shame.
For shame.
Shame.
I faxed it myself.
No, you could. Okay, I feel like you can kind of fact check yourself. But you could like, if you want, I can fact check you. But we can't just like, let me ask a good question. I'll look that up. Otherwise, that's no longer gut reaction. That's planned out research.
You're then researching. That's not what this whole thing is about. Your initial reaction to something, man.
Game's ruined.
Oh, yeah.
Show's gone. Show's ruined.
The horror.
No, jokes.
You
Well,
gotta
no,
experience
I think
this.
there's a point to it. I think there's a point
Dude.
to it in a way, because if we look at in history as well, Athena is the goddess of wisdom.
And war.
Well, yeah, a lot of and warfare and handicrafts. But I mean, in relation to wisdom and having feminine names. I'm saying it makes sense. I wonder if there's. I wouldn't. It would be cheating if I found this research after, like, good to go over.
It's all good. You're the host. You're our host.
That's far then tough. Because I was wondering, because I think I might look at this, if there's any link between wisdom and, I guess, femininity.
Oh.
In a way.
Yes.
That could actually lead to a very important thing that happened in the past, So if we go No. So let me explain. So if we go back
you're right.
let me explain.
Sorry, mate. No, go on.
So if we go back going back quite a long way, so a couple hundred years now, and we're going back to how the home life was, where a lot of the time kind of everyone works together, but the mother is basically your primary teacher. The mother is the one who teaches the most. But then if we look at how people age and biological aging, women live for longer than men. Just based on kind of how long we're able to live. Women on average just live longer. It's seen in elephants, but so there's a key linking between the knowledge that women pass on to children and the development of children. So, like, I think the relation to wisdom, this passing on of how you apply knowledge to the world, going feminine actually makes total sense if we relate it back to motherhood and childhood, and how, if we go back literally only a couple hundred years now, if that, your primary tutor, the person who mostly taught most of the things that around the world to you, was your mother.
Yes.
And so,
indeed.
And that was such a primary thing. And then, obviously, in Greek culture and in Roman culture and most cultures across, specifically the Western societies, I'm not too sure about other societies, but no, I know in Western ones, there's massive groups of women, female theologians, who were kind of massively respected in their fields, whatever those women were. So, like, I know in Catholicism you've got nuns. I know in Rome you had the Vestal Virgins. I know in Greece you had a couple of others. So wisdom being a feminine trait makes loads of sense if that is the case. If it does have a link, I think it might be to do with how women are the first teacher. Women are our first teachers. Kind of just going back 100 years, your main tutor is always your mother. Anyway.
Yeah.
You know what? I do think there's definitely a link, but I've been trying to do some research. I mean, it seems like it's. I don't want to say it, but it seems like more of a coincidence in grammar, rather than a direct kind of link. Because I was looking up, and then you have stuff like Athena, and Metis. They're goddess of wisdom, and it means cunning and wisdom craft, but they're more just feminine in language, and someone have feminine pronouns, but there is depict wisdom in feminine imagery and proverbs and stuff. But it's oh yeah, that's actually a fun point. Is I actually have seen evidence of that as well. Is because when you read in the Bible, there's the book of Proverbs, which was written by King Solomon, but there are several, and I mean several verses and passages about wisdom, and it almost it's coming from wisdom is almost personified as a woman. And it says that if you keep hold close to me, for I am more precious than jewels. And it says like women, like wisdom's like lips are sweet. So it obviously gets like personified, but I can't seem to find a link as to why. There might be something to what you're saying over.
Yeah, well, I mean,
can't seem to find
if
the
we,
correct link.
Wisdom is sexy.
yeah,
But
but if we're linking it to the Bible
Yeah.
and stuff,
Yeah.
if we're going all biblical ourselves, we can link it to Eve. So, okay, there was a lack of judgment in the fact how she at first took the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, and from the tree of knowledge, but at the same time, in doing so, she gained wisdom, because she gained knowledge about how the way she applies things can create good and evil, which to an extent I think would have to constitute wisdom. Because I think unless if you have the capacity to do bad, you have the capacity to fail, you have the capacity to negatively affect people, at the same time you don't have the capacity to figure out the correct way to apply your own knowledge. You don't have the capacity to have the correct way to think about things, because you've not developed that, because you don't have any compass to guide that. So
what was the tree called again? Wasn't it something like the forbidden tree? It was something to do with knowledge, if I recall.
The fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, so that's quite kind of tied up in wisdom to some degree.
So there is potentially, I'm not saying there is, but there is potentially an argument to say that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the tree of wisdom. I
may slightly push back on that to an extent.
Do push back on it, please. I do not know enough about it.
No. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not saying this like I'm a scholar either. But the point, a lot of people get confused, and I'm trying to stay on topic here, but I just need to give the context for a moment. I think a lot of people get confused about that Adam and Eve didn't know anything at all about good and evil. That they just didn't know it existed. They did know that there was right and wrong, but it was the biting of it brought out basically, how do I put this, a almost self-awareness, a higher level of like understanding of good and evil, because like they how do I put this? Trying to think how to put this. Because they knew like right and wrong. Like when they were in the garden, God, like they knew that, okay, they shouldn't punch each other, and and all of that stuff. But from eating of it, they understood the gravity of right and wrong, and then I'm really falling there. But yeah,
that makes sense.
It's more understanding of the gravity of good and evil. That's why it's the knowledge of, not just good and evil. It wasn't like there wasn't good and evil and then they bit the apple.
Yeah.
And then there was good and evil. No, it was the knowledge of it. But I think there's something to you where you say biting of it by proxy gave wisdom.
Yeah.
Because you now know that your actions have serious consequences for each other. But I would say I don't think it's that wise to eat that. It wasn't wise to eat the apple.
No. But
I mean, you're literally, you're being goaded into eating the fruit that God told you not to eat by the literal devil himself. So yeah, not the wisest thing.
Not the wisest decision.
But the results though, like you said, she became more knowledgeable at the end of the day.
Yeah, and
she may have fallen out of God's favor, but she gained more knowledge and independence because of it.
Yeah, and if we relate back to kind of modern discussion on the idea of the Garden of Eden and how people interpret the Bible and stuff like that, and you've got loads of people who talk about it all the time online. But if we relate it back to modern and how we see how, at least it's always said quite commonly within the Bible and within quite a lot of religious scripture on the Abrahamic religions, that man was made in the image of God. Man being Homo sapiens or whatever it is, we was made in the image of God. And if we was made in the image of God, therefore we have the capacity for the free will that he gave us. He gave us free will, which is an amazing gift. He gave us free will, and in that free will we did an unwise decision, but in doing so we understood the gravity of things to potentially allow us to be wise in the future, which I think is quite an interesting thing. And then if we bring that back to ancient cultures and relation to between the theory of thought or wisdom and philosophy, with women and strong powerful women being that Athena or other pantheonic gods or goddesses, it's quite an interesting thing how different cultures value wisdom in different ways. Because if we go back to the Norse, in Norse mythology, wisdom was gained through self-sacrifice. Like, Odin gained wisdom because he sacrificed his eye, I believe.
Yes.
And
hung himself.
Yeah, for 9 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whilst bleeding out.
Yeah, so it's like...
The dude is pretty batshit insane.
Yeah, and so if we're relating it to ancient concepts of wisdom and we mix that... So ancient pantheonic concepts of wisdom refer to wisdom as being something that you have to sacrifice something to gain. Whilst at the same time, if we look at then biblical references of the Garden of Eden and stuff, we sacrificed God's pleasure and God's love for the knowledge of what kind of wisdom and how we affect each other and all that kind of stuff. So we sacrificed, but we gained, which I think is quite an interesting.
There's a funny thing. There's a good quote. I don't know. I thought it was by someone older, but it was Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
The author and humorist. He has a very famous saying, which is that wisdom is gained through experience. And I think that, I think I believe that for a long time. Is to if we're going to go back to the start of the conversation, if we talk about what is wisdom, or how do we? Oh, actually, I thought it was a question.
Isn't it a priori? What's it called? The term, is it a priori? I've mispronounced this. The type of knowledge, like that is just a category of knowledge in itself.
Relating to or denoting a reasoning or knowledge which proceeds from theoretical deduction rather than observation or experience.
Okay. So that's the opposite, is it?
It's kind of like just thinking about it. Really, it's a gaining of knowledge.
So right. I can't remember these categories from classes.
No, it's okay. But I was thinking about. I've thought of a good question. Is given the statement I just gave from Terry Pratchett, how deep are we in? We're about half an hour in. Yeah, okay, so we're about good enough in. I want to ask two questions. We can take our time with both. I have two questions. First question is, how do we gain knowledge? And the second question, the bigger one, where do we think knowledge comes from?
Oh, beautiful questions.
Simple but effective.
Sounded like I had a euphoric experience there.
You were making some rather saucy noises.
That's what I'm saying. I was waiting a bit later to answer the question, but I think for my personal is ultimately, how do I get knowledge? As in, how do I get knowledge? I think I gain it from experience. Personally, I think I agree with that quote, because all of the times. I would personally go against in a way of, I would include a priori in this, to be fair, is personally whenever I gain wisdom, and also I guess I'm quoting was it Aristotle? No, Socrates, who says that the first step to acquire knowledge is to admit that you have none.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah,
Mm,
Socrates. Socrates. He claimed famously that I know that I know nothing, and in order to have wisdom first, you must first understand that you know nothing at all. And for me personally, whenever I feel I've gained wisdom, it's from having an experience or witnessing something and trying to understand it and using my intuition. Because a lot of times, I would personally say I'm more of an emotionally intelligent person.
Mm.
Obviously, I use the word intelligent there, but what I mean is when I witness problems, I witness fights or something, I witness arguments, I have the ability to know what should have been done and what shouldn't have been done because of experiences I've had. And from these experiences, I can move forward. So I would definitely agree with that. But I would ask you guys first, how do you guys think you gain knowledge? You could push back, you could disagree, that's fine. I'm just curious.
I think personally, it's a combination of accepting advice from others and also cementing things with practical personal experience. So an example for this was when I was going just between in the middle of uni and it got to somewhere and I needed a job, so I got myself a job doing fundraising. And my there was a lot of things that was taught to me about how to deal with situations like you got people being rude or you've got a difficult door because someone's shared something quite personal with you. And there's one thing saying this is how you deal with it, and there's another thing when you've got an actual experience with it. So I think for me, you get I get but wisdom by listening to how other people have thought and how other people have experienced things and that kind of stuff and how they've dealt with it to give me scope to then handle it myself. But it's only after I've handled it myself and thought I could have done this differently do I then have the wisdom to pass on that better advice, that better knowledge. So it's like a combination of both, at least in my experience.
Anyone got any thoughts on that?
I guess you need to have a certain amount of humility, as sort of Will pointed out, but also so there was Socrates by admitting what you don't know. But I suppose that, on the other side of that, you have to also be able to admit what you do know, and sometimes you can kind of almost yourself out of it. You try and be just a bit too. If you have a bit too much humility when you actually when the course of action's pretty obvious and in front of you, and you know fine well already, and you can kind of almost undermine your wisdom by sort of doubting yourself too much in a way, I suppose, as well. Sometimes.
That's quite
Yes.
interesting.
What would you say, Touchgrass? What would you say?
So
Nice.
I
That's
don't
fine.
have that much more to add to what Harry Scary and Overt have said. But I will say, so of course, relating to the Socrates quote about how you need to admit that you have no knowledge in order to gain knowledge. Like if we're speaking in terms of regards to getting wisdom from like taking advice from like other people, like willing to take advice from other people, that also extends as hard as it will be for many people, including myself, to accept advice and therefore the gaining of wisdom from people that you potentially don't like.
Say that last part again. Say that last part again one more time.
Like,
You don't need to rephrase that. I just want to hear what I think you cut out.
okay. You potentially, a lot of times, as hard as it will be for a lot of people, including myself, I've struggled with this many a time. You need to be able to be open to accepting advice and therefore gaining the ability to gain more knowledge from people that you don't like. Because there will often be a lot of times where you will come across people who are very unpleasant and who you disagree with morally on a whole bunch of shit, but they will occasionally be able to give you some really good advice. And you have to try your best to make sure that your moral disagreements don't get in the way of that.
You know what? I actually very, very much agree with that. I'll be real. You touched on something that's a good point. I haven't thought of when doing this, but I've had that thought many a times. I think Jordan Peterson said something, and he was. I think what he was talking about is between couples fighting, but he was like, if you're having an argument with someone, and let's say you are better at phrasing your arguments than they are, you can articulate your arguments better, and whoever you're arguing against is fluttering and filibustering and all of that stuff. Just because you're better at articulating doesn't mean you are correct. You should still try to hear them out, because like Grass just said, they could still be right. And I think that on a level is a very good example of wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely.
Yeah, and I do just want to like say it as well. So, like, I'm assuming the rest of us on this podcast feel as well. I'm personally not the biggest fan of Jordan Peterson, but I will say
Next episode.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
I'm joking.
But as has been proven by what what you had just shared, like he has a degree in psychology, so he'll know what he's like talking about, at least when it comes to psychology. So
yeah.
Like, if we're hearing him out in terms of that, then so be it. You know?
Okay. Well, yeah, that's fair enough. And I definitely agree with you. Is because even your enemies, because they're your enemy, doesn't mean they're wrong all the time. And that's absolutely the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely want to go back to, because I found the quote I was talking about earlier. Question you brought it up, saying like is knowledge, and correct me if I'm phrasing this wrong, but you said is like applying knowledge wise. Is that was that what you said earlier?
Me?
Scary, hairy, scary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, is that wisdom in itself?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
how you apply the knowledge or how you make decisions.
Okay.
And are your decisions based on knowledge and information? And is that the best way to make decisions?
Okay.
People also
okay.
make decisions based on like vibes and things like that. And sometimes they may even turn out to be the correct decision. Because I guess your brain doesn't consciously process everything in a way that you're kind of aware of all the time. Sometimes you just like
it's not always
general
logical either.
It's just
about
something, and that may actually be like it may be informative.
Yeah, because the reason why is because there's a philosopher called Seneca. If any of us went to secondary school, we know that more for a research or studying website. But Seneca was a philosopher, and he has a quote, or rather, that he argued that if that wisdom is wasted if kept hidden. And I'll read out his full quote, which is, "Nothing will ever please me, no matter how excellent or beneficial, if I must retain the knowledge of it to myself." And then to summarize, he says, "No good thing is pleasant to possess without friends or to share it." And there's another way of talking about that. It's not just keeping the knowledge to yourself. It's also a waste if you don't use it. What good is wisdom if you don't use it? Because you can, and this is something I've grappled with for I'm kind of still grappling with. But let's say you have the wisdom to deal with a topic, whether it be theoretical, whether it be that Sophia or Phronesis, or the other one, which is episteme, whether it's that, it's if you don't have the knowledge. Let's say you have a friend and he's asking you for advice on buying a house, and you've been in the exact same position as him 5 years ago. You've went through all of it. You went through all that, like, grief, all of it. What good is having all that experience if when he asks you for help, you don't give it to him or you don't use it? That's why I would push back. Is I would say wisdom is, or you applying knowledge is a form of wisdom, because if it's just all in your head and you don't use it, even if you don't use it for yourself, then you might as well not have it, because there are other people who would love to have that knowledge and use it.
Yeah.
I think
That's me pushing back.
Because keeping it all to yourself in your own head is very it can be very destructively selfish, and being that level of destructive in how selfish you're being, or rather just lazy, I guess, like, because you're not even bothering to share said knowledge. That's not wise. That's the opposite of wise.
I think if we're discussing about sharing of knowledge, I think the best thing that I can think about at the moment, that's kind of very topical at the moment, is at the moment we've got a massive movement that's kind of developed because censorship exists, that basically starts off lots of movements along these lines. Have actually started off with really great intentions. They've wanted to go in and help people with wisdom, what they believed was wisdom, thinking that this would be the only thing that they do. So I know that there was a lobby group, I think it's Australian, that actually went in to talk to Visa and debit MasterCard companies about how some games have been kind of labelled, or how some games portray women or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure on the specifics, but anyways, they went in with this intention of trying to better kind of restrict certain types of content from being easily accessible to everyone to access straight away. Which, in of itself, from the sounds of the content, it sounds like it was a really good decision to do, if that makes sense. It was a really good initial thing, but then they started adding more and more and more, and what was originally seen as a wise thing kind of fell apart, because they wanted to share what they thought was this really wise decision to save all these people, or save the perception of women, or perception of different groups. But in doing so, what's happened is that they've been allowed control over stuff that they don't necessarily partake in themselves, which has negatively affected. I think there was a couple indie game sites who've basically had to take down most of the games and all this kind of stuff, just because of the nature of how it's worked out.
So I ask, do you not say it out loud if you're trying to avoid it for privacy? Would you mind sending me do you know the name of this group?
I don't, but I believe there was this. I basically came across
just so I can look it up, just so I can look it up and see like.
I believe it was the same lobby group that was lobbying for cuties to still stay on Netflix. I don't know. But
I'm now getting on a watch list. That's now
yeah,
happening.
it's it was. I was just scrolling through Instagram and it came up, a couple times because that's how Instagram does it. So I might be completely wrong with it. It might not be a real thing, but if it is, I think that's for wisdom. You go in trying to share that belief, share that worldview, but then kind of it ended up being negative, which I think is a shame.
We're 3 episodes in and we're already spreading misinformation. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm just trying to. It's just because you said couldn't remember. Saw it earlier today. I was like, oh no, it's a fake news podcast. It's a fake news podcast.
So I've actually been sent a message from someone who's watching saying how they agree that wisdom is knowledge. Wisdom and knowledge is learned through experience.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is someone said? Is that in the chat?
That's not in the chat. That's through a private message to me. But I just thought I'd mention it.
Okay. Well, I think then because I can't find anything straight away, so I'm not gonna talk too much on that. But I feel like because there's not much time left, I think we should move on to. I guess we can maybe call it the final question: is where do we think wisdom comes from? And for my opinion, of my own person, because the reason why I know the question sounds similar about how do we gain wisdom and then where does wisdom come from. I know they sound similar, but to me, I've for a long time always had this thought of, okay, for context, within my own personal worldview, I do believe in, I am Christian, and so within Christian worldview it says that wisdom comes from God, and I believe that not just because of that's just what I believe. I personally, for a long time now, felt there's something a lot grander about wisdom than any other form of knowledge. Because if we think about it, we've asked that's why I asked the question today is what is wisdom? And we've talked about how it's the application of knowledge, or how it's like the understanding of it, or using it correctly, or all these others. But how can knowledge exist? To me, this is my own personal thing. Maybe this is branching into a different kind of question, but to me, I personally don't think you can get wisdom. Sorry, you can't get wisdom without some kind of higher being. Because wisdom is because we know things, right? That's why knowledge and intelligence are more closer together than wisdom, right? I can know how a computer works. I can know how a mouse works. I can know how a monitor works. But then, if I decide to take that knowledge, open up a shop, and give advice to people how to fix theirs, that's different. That's a different kind of thing. And I feel like if it makes sense to me, if there is a being higher than ourselves that that already knows everything, then because wisdom is also, to me personally, tied to morals in a way. Knowledge, because truth is truth regardless of what we feel about it. But wisdom, I personally don't feel it will always be tied in some sense to a morality. And we're guided by that in a way. I personally feel like that's the right action to do with it. So I would say that's what I would say that's where wisdom comes from. Obviously, you guys can disagree, you guys can push back, but I guess that's my personal statement about it.
I think, for me, personally, I think that wisdom is accumulation of knowledge you've experienced compared to knowledge you've accumulated through external means. So, like you said before, when someone teaches you how to do something, that in of itself is a form of wisdom that's passed on to you, but because you don't necessarily have the practical experience to back it up, sometimes you fail. So an example in a different kind of work would be, I quite enjoy Excel. I love Excel. I love making little spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. It's quite a fun little thing to do sometimes. But the issue is that no matter... And I could also know quite a lot to do with, let's say, cars. I'm not big on cars myself, but I could know loads on cars. And then I decide to become a car salesman or go into a car industry. And I know these two individual things, but I've not learnt the process necessary to integrate the cars and the Excel spreadsheets in the way that's needed or required. So that's where I think wisdom comes in. Wisdom is the practical application of your intelligence, and your intelligence is your thought of application of what is learned from experience and or stories. I think that's kind of my take on it.
And scary touch grass. What do you guys kind of think? And it's not about necessarily about. It doesn't have to be about what I said, but what do you personally think? Where do you guys think where it comes from?
Linking morality or sort of ethical frameworks with wisdom, I can understand why you do that, but on the basis that if you're making a decision that's correct, it's ethically correct in theory, but that is the metric that you'd be using to judge the success of something. Is the basis that it's ethically correct. You could alternatively say something's wise to do, irrespective of the morality of it, just on the basis that it's effective to your end goals. It could be morally abhorrent to most people, but you could say it makes sense. It's wise. It's you're doing something that that benefits you or helps you achieve your goals, irrespective of morality. So, and I guess you could say that's still wise, even if it's in a fairly evil type way.
I feel like personally though, if you're, I do get what you're trying to say, and that's a fair point. There's some, I guess, like perhaps there is some element where you can have wisdom kind of irregardless of morality, but I would kind of still not really agree with that, because if I'm doing something, and this is why I say wisdom to me is founded on morality, because if I'm doing something, or if someone is doing something that is to their benefit, but at the detriment of others.
Well, that's
To me, sorry, I was just taking a pause. Sorry, I really don't. I was just taking a pause. I was just trying to gather my thoughts. Is that's not wise, because it might be wise. Let me put it like this: you have a stockbroker, money man, a baller, right?
A baller,
right? Which was a little bit taller with a rabbit and a hat. He was, and he has a lot of money, and he has an opportunity to grow his money tenfold. And there would be the ability for him to do that. But if he did do that, it could cause, and most likely would cause, a crash that affects thousands of people. It affects their stock decisions, their prices go down, and it is, for everyone else but him and his family, a bad move. To me, that's not wise. Because to me, wisdom is personally a good quality. And if you are doing something that is at a large detriment to others, no matter how much it benefits you, that's not a wise thing to do. It may be a monetarily good thing to do. It may be as a strategy a good thing to do in order to make money, but to me that's not wise, because you're disregarding other people, and to me wisdom takes into the account other people's not always opinions
does, but I wouldn't necessarily say wisdom does. Like, it has to consider that at all. It depends how you're going to gauge success. If you're saying success is creating good for everyone and not harming other people, then I guess yes, it would be wise. It would be wise to conduct yourself in a way that's coherent with it and helps those outcomes. But if if you define success in other ways very different sort of outcomes, you could be far more kind of Machiavellian about it. You could just sort of say that you pursue whatever's the most effective path regardless to achieve your goals. Um, and you could say that's wise. You can make an argument that's wise.
Cut out a lot there,
Um,
mate. Sorry, you cut out a
sorry,
lot there.
I'm saying that you could, well, it depends. Like, if you divorce the ethical side of it, of the argument from the actual like practical side, because also I think the three sorts of wisdom you mentioned earlier, did any of them actually have ethics as a prerequisite? I don't think they did.
Good point. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And so you could have a sort of Machiavellian where you're sort of pursuing things in a sort of calculated way to just get the most to achieve your goals in the most effective, efficient way possible. And you could see that's wise. It's wise to do so, even if it potentially hurts other people or goes against any kind of established ethical framework.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like
Yeah,
I was gonna relate it
yeah,
to
it does.
kind of with wisdom being the practical application of knowledge. It doesn't it like you said, it just doesn't have the prerequisite of needing to help others. Obviously, your personal wisdom might be tied to how you help others, but at the same time, if we're looking at nations, no nation on the planet is experiencing the same issues as the others. No nation on the planet has the same issues as its next door neighbour. Every kind of collective people have to essentially think of themselves, and sometimes they can think of others, which is amazing, but it doesn't always happen. And so, I mean, like, for example, when we elect politicians and stuff, we elect people who we think we can trust with making decisions for our local area. It's not us, at least in the United Kingdom, that's how we pick politicians. We're not picking them for another area or another area of the country or another part of the world. We're picking them because we believe they will look after our local area. And that to us is the wisest decision based on kind of our experience or whatever. So I think that's
But
kind
that
of where it
to
comes
me,
from.
personally, that to me is a morally good way. As in, yeah, okay, maybe, but that's why I said like morally, like it's tied to morals. You notice in my thing, I said that this businessman would be making a decision that is good for him, but bad for literally kind of everyone else. And you brought in about the point of how we vote for politicians in this country. Yes, those politicians, that we are making that decision regardless of people in Ethiopia. My point wasn't necessarily like wisdom is always for all of these people. I just mean you brought that point of when we elect these officials, we think it can do this. They can do good for the country. It wasn't just so. That's why I'd still think because if I'm electing someone and I doing it because how it absolutely disregards everyone else, then that's not wise. But like you said in your analogy, when we elect officials, we're electing officials because we think we can do the best. They could do the best for our country. Now, we could be wrong. But it would be wise to do so under that mindset. So that's why I still think that in some way, again, to push back. How much time have we got left, by the way? Because I kind of have one more question.
We can basically carry on going as long as we want, but we're past an hour now, so whenever we want to stop, we can stop.
I can only do so that nearly came out very wrong. I have to go soon, so I'll pose one more question, and then we'll do this. And So what I want to ask then, and it's kind of similar again to our last one, but I want to ask you guys: is wisdom man-made? Yay or nay?
Are you looking for a yes or no answer?
It can be drawn out and all that stuff, but I would pose the question: do we think wisdom is man-made?
Yay.
Yay. Okay. I see. That's a yay.
Yay.
What else do we think? What else do we think?
I would say overall, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Do you want to give a reason? Or...
Yeah. Obviously, no. All of this is a reason. Sorry. Yeah. I meant to say, like, you can give your initial thing. Like, we can talk about this topic in breadth. I just meant like like that's just how I'm phrasing the question. Is yes or no? Yes. Why? No. Why? So yeah, you can go off. Go off.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's somewhat of a construction based on language, like other concepts are, and yes, you could. It is something that sort of exists that we are describing, but it's only as good as the language describe it. And if we had fewer words, we would be able to describe fewer things. Um, and and yes, it's and then there's a sort of theoretical framework we've put things in categories. But does it actually really exist, and does it really matter? Do animals have wisdom, and does it matter? That's the thing. Like ultimately, because if you link it to an ethical framework, you could say it matters. But if you actually completely don't care about the outcomes of anything, like you could make an argument that it doesn't really matter and doesn't exist. Fundamentally, why is wisdom? You would generally have to link
You
it
cut
to
out
the
for
idea
me,
of a higher
personally,
good.
boss. Could you like you said you said like wisdom like if you think about this, it doesn't matter, and you ask why, and then you cut out.
Well, does it exist and does it matter? Like ultimately, is there actually something called wisdom that really exists? It's what we're describing a set of acts. Does it really matter? Like, why does it matter other than when you link it to a sort of ethical framework because you think it's good for people to make wise decisions, which would tend to agree with. But ultimately, that's a bit of a construction that people have, one way
Okay.
or another.
I don't know if anyone else give that. I don't know.
I've
Overt.
not.
Do you
Yeah,
agree, disagree?
I disagree that it's man-made, and the
Cool.
reason I disagree it's man-made is because if we look at the framework of elephants, I think elephants are really cool. But anyways,
Nice.
bringing up elephants.
They are pretty cool.
They are pretty cool.
I'm quite upset that we don't use war elephants anymore as well. They were like a really cool aspect.
Specifically war.
Yeah, specifically war elephants. Like it was a really
Oh
cool
my goodness.
period of time. Like we had war dogs. We had
War is
elephants.
cool, guys.
That's how things brought up.
Over advocates for animal cruelty.
No.
I'm joking.
I
There was
promote-
legal reasons. That's a joke.
Yeah, I promote equal cruelty in war.
No. Stop it.
Jesus
Stop it.
Christ.
Only
No,
joking.
stop
Only
it.
joking.
Edgelord.
What?
Alright, go on.
So within the animal kingdom, there are several different instances when you're looking at how animals treat and act around each other. And for me, the main comparability is animals that we associate with being wise or spiritually accurate or active have massive female role models. So we talk about elephants, for example. So with the females within those species live longer than the men. And the females within those species that we accumulate similar traits of wisdom also kind of have that extended period of time of life for the women. So I think that wisdom isn't a man-made construct. I think to some extent it is the lessons we learn from our mothers. And that, I think, is the main thing. Like, we learn wisdom from our mothers, and a lot of the time it's like practicality or sacrifice from our fathers. So it's both of them are quite important and integral aspects of human existence, and so we attribute them to humanity, but they're not expressly human. They're not just human characteristics. I think that lots of animals have wisdom. You know, like dogs follow humans because it was a wise decision to be with humans during the Ice Age. Then we kind of tamed them and all this kind of stuff because it was a wise decision on our part. So, but both animals kind of thought that was a wise decision. Like, which I just think is quite an interesting thing to keep in mind. Like, with wisdom is kind of like it's not expressly human. Like,
yeah, I suppose you're linking it with socialization.
Makes sense.
Which is something that's came up a few times. That like wisdom is something that's sort of usually obtained and even sort of shared through socialization with others.
yeah.
Well, I think one thing if I can give my thing is I would agree and slightly disagree, but I still overall agree with Overt is that, as I've previously, I guess, stated, that I believe wisdom is man-made. It's not man-made, because to me, I don't put this, because to me, wisdom is a higher form of knowledge. Like I kind of previously mentioned, it's not just knowing something. That's why I would agree. I think what Aristotle, he was kind of the guy, kind of the big guy with wisdom. He kind of it was the guy who really pushed for philosophy. He's called like the father of philosophy. But he talked about phronesis, that kind of philosophy. But to me, I think it's not man-made, because I don't know how, call it the scientific understanding of how humans came to be. Regardless of it, like I don't know how you can get wisdom in a universe where it is without a mind prior to the human mind, because evolution to an extent doesn't produce wisdom. This is where I would disagree with Overt, is because I personally wouldn't say that animals have wisdom, because the main difference between us and animals is conscience.
Oh.
It's the main difference is conscience. Tigers don't have a conscience. They don't have a sense of morality, and conscience very much so is tied with morality.
Well, but
yeah, go on. I just want to say I wasn't finished my point. Go on.
Three sorts of wisdom that you talked about before, which is sort of technical wisdom, technical knowledge. You could probably say that some animals have that. What was the other one? Practical knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, some have
Right.
that.
Okay. The reason why I'd
But
say
do
no.
they have epistemological knowledge? Probably not.
No, but the reason what I was trying to say,
some
though,
have a little bit, perhaps.
is reason why I say they wouldn't have wisdom. And you bring up a good point. There's an overlap, but animals act out of instinct. A tiger, when a tiger hunts, it doesn't have a conscience that's where it's planning out ahead. In a sense of this, but it's acting out of instinct, not out of. It has no moral compass. It has no self-awareness. It just it hunts and it's stuff out of instinct, because that's just what it does. Whereas with humans, we can plan out in advance. And when we talk about ethics and morals and wisdom, it's a higher level of application, because when we plan, even if we go back to older days, when we were hunting, when we were hunter-gatherers, right? We used our ability to of our hands and of our strength and all this stuff to build stuff, to make weapons, to make materials, to mine materials, to gather materials, so that we can use them for later adventures or later, what's the word I'm losing the word I'm thinking of, but later endeavors. And also as well, wisdom a lot of times is when, because if we think about it, in most cases, phronesis is the practical wisdom. But I don't think you get. I think even you, Scary, admitted this, is that wisdom in terms of Sophia, that theoretical wisdom, that doesn't happen just by chance. That's why I personally say it's not man-made, because if we talk about it just as a society, you can get, because this somewhat falls into morals, I guess. It somewhat falls into morals about moral subjectivity within the society. You can agree on what you consider moral, but that's what you consider as a society, but is it moral? And with wisdom, you can have knowledge about certain things, but how you use it is a different thing entirely. Because you can use it very poorly. You can use the knowledge you have in a very bad way and it can go very south. Or you can use the knowledge in a good way and it will work out well.
You can also, on the face of it, make a decision that, based on all the knowledge you have, would appear to be completely supported by sort of higher reasoning, and then it can end up being an ineffective, bad decision in the end. Like it may not achieve the outcomes that you just make. Sometimes it can be. I guess it's never a guarantee on it, is there?
What, to using wisdom? There's never a guarantee.
Yeah, because there's other variables you can't account.
That's fair. No, that's fair. That's fair. You can have wisdom to a point where you think you're acting out of the best interest, but there is still stuff that comes your way. I would agree with that.
You can also kind of fall upwards. You can actually seemingly do the wrong thing, and it can work out. Like it just sort of seemingly by chance. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that so the value of wisdom, I guess, is not absolute in that way.
Right. Well, I think the reason why as well is because I guess I give some things within my worldview about why I think wisdom is because it also says within Proverbs is that wisdom is more valuable than jewels because it ends wars. Right? Because if you were to ask me, would you rather be intelligent or wisdom would you rather be intelligent or wise? I personally would take wise, because intelligence is at first is cool when you know a lot of stuff, but that wisdom is the application and the just application. And I don't think you get wisdom just by how, I guess, in a way, some people believe science has brought us to. And so, unfortunately, this I do have to go, but I think
This is interesting,
it's
though.
good. It's good.
I guess that wisdom is the thing that would maybe just stop you being a smart. But if you have all the intelligence, that sort of limited sort of ability to apply any of it, then yeah, probably going to miss
because I feel like that's my final comment. Because I feel personally, you can be wise to me and not intelligent, but you can't, or at least you can be wise without and not be that intelligent, but intelligence without wisdom is nearly useless to me. I think that's why I'd say that. But I guess we can go over the final things about what we think, final thoughts on. So I guess to wrap up, because personally I do have to go, but I would ask you guys then to give your final thoughts on what is wisdom. You can go round, but I don't know, Overt, if you want to start, if you feel personally you want
to. I think that wisdom ultimately is the application of knowledge you've gained in pursuit of whatever you think is morally right. I think morality is a form of wisdom, but only if you're practicing thea, If you're practicing other forms of wisdom, it isn't important. But basically, with wisdom, it is ultimately trying to find the best possible outcome for your goals and applying your knowledge either to help yourself or to help others, depending on how you frame your life.
Fair enough. I definitely agree with a lot of that. I don't know, touch grass or scary. What do you want to give your thoughts? What do you think wisdom is as a final note?
I mean,
I'm sorry, I don't think I have anything to add. Forgive me.
It's not necessarily an ad, mate. It's more considering all the topics we've talked about and all the questions we've posed so far, now coming to a close.
Yeah.
If I was to ask you, taking all the information you've gathered now, to you, how would you answer the question, what is wisdom?
I'd say that it is exactly how you described it. How wisdom is basically it is the constructive and considerate application of intelligence.
Pretty tight.
yeah,
Scary?
that's not far off what I'd say, because yes, it seems to be the difference between wisdom and intelligence, to some degree, the applicability of it. That sort of that you actually have to sort of act like wisdom might be your sort of ability to make competent decision as such, and know how to achieve certain outcome effectively. Whereas sort of intelligence is more just related to the acquisition of knowledge and capacity for learning, which I guess they overlap, but although not in D&D.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Not exactly. Not if you roll a one. Not if you're on negative. Not if you're on negative, then it's not.
I think, though, well, I'm sure we've all met people who seem incredibly intelligent but kind of stupid at the same time, and I think we've probably all been that as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Or the other way around, or kind of, you can be a bit of a I know myself, I can be a bit of a dumbass, but also kind of sometimes do what needs to be done in a kind of roundabout way or whatever.
No, yeah.
No, definitely. I guess we can close it. I guess if we were to close it then, I guess you guys can say if we agree with this, is that like the wisdom is the considerate application of knowledge in the pursuit of the best desired outcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
For yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
You've just got to put that in because obviously we talked about it earlier, but yeah.
I'm saying that it's like thinking about all of what we said.
Yeah.
If we, as a group. Yeah, I'm not saying this is the wisdom. So
yeah.
if we were to answer this as a group, combining what we've said, would we agree with that, or would stuff to add?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me.
All right. Overt, if you want to close us out, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much for listening to Gut Reaction. This has been the third podcast. This will be able for you to listen to on both YouTube and Spotify. I will post the links onto my socials, and obviously have a wonderful week. Hopefully being back next week with a very interesting question about some form of literature, brought to you by a guest.
Teasing us.
Yes, this will be brought again by Brandon, who hosted us last week. He's got a very interesting topic up his sleeve, so yeah, we should get round to that quite niftily. But I'm not going to spoil any more because people on this podcast might even be on, and I don't want them to be spoiled. Anyways, wish everyone a wonderful week. Hopefully, be back next week.
Goodbye.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye. Bye.